Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese.
Of course. It's okay, I'll take it from here. Hey, I got your seat!
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and I've got a little extra pep in my step today because we've got a great show, and I cannot wait for this one. We have two great coaches that have done great things lately. Let's start with LSU baseball coach Jay Johnson. His team is the #1 ranked team coming into the season, which starts in 2.5 weeks. They have brought in an incredible amount of talent to Baton Rouge. They're looking to do some things that they used to do in the 90s when they won 5 out of 10. And we also have the most successful coach in the city this year. His name is Willie Fritz. We know what he's done. He took a 2-10 team, made them 12-2 with the big Cotton Bowl win over the Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams and the USC Trojans. Both these guys will be on this show, and I cannot wait for that. Now let's talk the NFL playoffs. Because the Saints had a mediocre season, most of the people in Louisiana, certainly the LSU fan base, was rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals because of that guy right there, Joe Burrow, who has done amazing things with the Bengals, just like he did at LSU. Well, everybody was tuned to this game because it was Burrow versus Mahomes, two of the great young quarterbacks in today's NFL. Well, that guy you see right there came out victorious in one of the better, closer games that we've seen in a bit. That was a game-winning field goal at the end, but this guy right here, Mahomes, came in injured, and he had a bad leg, and he did some heroic things. Congrats to the Kansas City Chiefs. They won on a controversial ending to the game. A lot of controversy during the game with the referees, but they won 23-20, and they will be going to the Super Bowl. And as good as that was, there's Butker with the game-winning kick, a 45-yarder to win it in 20-degree weather. Not an easy task, but the guy that, my MVP of this game, is Chris Jones. He was phenomenal. This guy from Mississippi State was the defensive end. He played all over the line, much like Aaron Donald, and was all over Joe Burrow the entire game. Hey, moving on to the NFC Championship, what a great story there is in Jalen Hurts, the quarterback that was at Alabama, then Oklahoma, then drafted as a receiver. Now he's a quarterback, and he's a Super Bowl quarterback. Great victory by them. They won 31-7, but it was about Purdy being hurt. The game was over pretty much right there when Hassan Reddick came out and knocked Purdy, and he hurt his elbow. They went to their 4th-string quarterback. Then he got hurt. They had to go back to Purdy, and he couldn't throw the ball. So that guy, Reddick, right there, was the defensive player that changed this game. He made that play. He got another turnover. He was phenomenal with sacks and everything. One of the great linebackers in our game today. Also, this matchup is going to be Hurts and Mahomes, the first black quarterback matchup in Super Bowl history. Doug Williams, back from Louisiana back in the mid-'80s, was the first black quarterback. Now we have two together. This is a great moment. Also, the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis. What a great story that is. Those two brothers, the best players at their position in the NFL. They're a lot of fun. That's going to be a Super Bowl matchup to remember. Let's go to LSU women's basketball, please, because this team is unreal. They're 21-0 right now. They beat Tennessee last night, a perennial power, and that girl right there, Her name is Morris. We got Morris right there. Alexis Morris. She had 31 points, a career high. Also, Angel Reese got her 21st straight double-double. Kim Mulkey is doing wonderful things with this team. I cannot believe it. Zion Williamson, he's an all-star. Y'all, the starter. He's going to be a starter in the game. Unfortunately, the team is not doing so well. They've lost 8 in a row and not doing great right now. The Pelicans play the Broncos. Not the Broncos, the Denver Nuggets tonight on the road. Also, you have the LSU men's team, another team that's reeling 8 in a row losses. But on the flip side, Tulane basketball, they've won 6 out of 8. They play SMU tomorrow night. And how about the Golf Live? It was Rory versus Patrick Reed, the T-toss, all the controversy. Rory ends up beating him on the last shot. PGA Golfers Live. Rory beat Patrick in Dubai on the very last shot, a 15-footer to win it all. Hey, we got a great show. I just told you it's going to be Jay Johnson with the #1 Tigers and Willie Fritz with the great Tulane Green Wave team from this year, right here on Primetime Sports.
Sundays at 6:30 p.m.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. We know the Super Bowl is around the corner and basketball is in full speed right now. We're getting into March Madness time. But you know what? Baseball is here in just 2.5 weeks. The LSU Tigers will start their season, and the expectations are higher than they've been in a while. This is a team we know that won 5 national championships in the 90s, but that was 3 decades ago. They won one in 2009. That's the last one they've had. Last year's LSU team, Jay Johnson, the head coach, his first year at LSU, they finished 4th. And they had a great run towards the end of the season, and that's the highest they finished since 2017. And we have him back. We had him here in July, and now he's back again for the second time. Welcome, buddy.
How you doing?
Good to see you, Jay. Scott. Oh, man, I remember when you came last time. We had a flash flood. Things were a little crazy around here. And I know you were trying to get down here. And you got here, but you were so happy because you just finished a big recruiting run. You went on the transfer portal trail. And now 6 months later, how's this things looking for you?
It was a great fall. Right. I think year one, a lot of times, obviously it's always about results at LSU, but it was also about building a solid foundation. And I think we accomplished that. And last year's team, very proud of them, got the best guys back from that team. Yeah. And really did a good job recruiting, you know, both in the high school side of it and then the transfer portal, which is still relatively new to all of us and all sports. But like the roster, like how they've worked, blended together, the concept of building team has been done very well by the players, and excited to get this thing going. You know, baseball is a little different than football. I mean, you know, football does have transfer portal too, but the way the rankings work these days, you know, they look at what you did last year, son. Look and see who you got back, and then they look at your potential. And LSU got that #1 ranking a few weeks ago, I believe Baseball America. And I looked at that and I'm like, wow, the expectations are high. Obviously, we know what we got in the transfer portal, and we'll talk about some of those guys in a second. But when you saw the #1, I don't know if you were surprised or not, because you know what you have right there. But what did that mean expectation-wise to you? Yeah, I think I look at, you know, everything can be a positive. Yeah. And I think when you look at the #1 ranking thing for building a program, I think it shows future players, recruits, you're on the right track. Yeah. But really all that is validation of you have some returning players that have had success. Dylan Cruz is the best player in college baseball. Yes. Trey Morgan from right here in New Orleans is the best first baseman in college baseball. Jordan Thompson, shortstop. Ty Floyd, pitcher. We have some really integral pieces from last year's team that was successful returning, and then you add the recruits from the portal and the high school players. And so really it's just validation of you have some good returning players and you've recruited really well. Relative to getting into the season, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Well done, but I mean, it's nice to start that way. I know you're the hunted as opposed to the hunter. LSU was the hunted in the 90s, and I remember being there in the early part of the 90s. I was in law school at LSU. I was there in the 80s when they started that success as an undergrad. I remember Skip Burtman got there and things just kind of turned immediately. And it's kind of like that with you, because I remember when you got hired, I started looking at recruiting, and I know that's a lifeblood at any college team in any sport. And you were #1 in recruiting at San Diego. And then I saw some stuff you did, obviously, at Arizona, and you got to 2 College World Series, and you got to the final series in one of those World Series. But when you look at this place and how it is to recruit here as opposed to somewhere else, anybody can say they can recruit, and then, you know, there's a lot of competition in the SEC, but you're getting these players from everywhere. Yeah, no doubt. I think LSU, it's a powerful brand. You know,
Yeah.
Coach Burtman talks about that all the time, and he's responsible for that. And one of the draws here was I really believe in our system of developing a program, of developing players, and then to be at a school that is going to attract the top players in the country and put them into that system. That's ultimately what made the decision for me to want to be here. And so far it's come to fruition, and really excited about the now and the future. We have a real importance, or we place a real importance on staying present and in the moment and focused on today. And that's the way our players have to think. As the leader of the program, I'm the one that is looking, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, as well as right now. And I just think we have so many good things in place to build on the tradition that Coach Burtman and Coach Maneri created, which I'm very proud to be a part of.
Sure.
And we're working really hard to keep that going.
You know, when I look at recruiting, because I did a national recruiting show years ago for Fox in the 90s and early 2000s, I know what it's like to recruit for football, but baseball, I've always wondered, man, because, I mean, I looked at your high school recruiting class last year. I remember Carl Crawford's kid, this 5'2" athlete, and you always have to worry about the guys going pro. It doesn't hurt because they know, hey, this kid, if he had gone, he would have gone to LSU. But what's that like, though, when you have to, like, recruit, and then you know that this guy might get drafted and leave?
Yeah, it's you cannot win a national title anymore in college baseball unless you have future major league players on your team.
No doubt.
Anybody that thinks that they can, they're fooling themselves. And you just look at how the SEC has kind of dominated college baseball and the College World Series, and look at the future or the current major league players. A lot of those guys were key players on those teams that won national titles. So it is, as you said, the lifeblood of your program. I think there's a really good talent base here in Louisiana. We're right next to the state of Texas, which has great players.
Yeah.
Florida is not far away. And then I paid attention to what Coach Burtman did with some of those championship teams, and there were some California players.
Yes, they were.
So with that, like, I think we could be a national recruiting brand and base, and then really use all of that to put the ideal team together that can help us compete at the top of the SEC. And if you're competing at the top of the SEC, you're competing for a national title.
I watched your press conference. I don't know if it was an actual official press conference, but I know you're being interviewed by a bunch of people, and I saw it on 2 different stations. And I loved the quote you mentioned about playing in the SEC, the analogy you made. I'd love for you to share it with me instead of me bringing it up. But I thought it was perfect because, listen, the SEC was really good when I was in college in the 80s, but it wasn't like it is now. Like when you have 10 teams ranked, I mean, at certain times, you know, sometimes they might even have 11 at a time. There's no easy outs in this league. So what's that like?
It's awesome. So the analogy that I used was it's like running into a burning building as the firefighter. If there's any hesitation, if there's any fear, if there's any self-doubt, you're going to get crushed. I mean, the house is going to burn down. So you have to focus on what you need to do to get the job done. You need to run in there. You need to get people out of the house. You need to get your hose out, start, you know, getting rid of the flames and all of that stuff. And so that's how we're approaching this #1 ranking and this season, is kind of starting the fight. You know, you mentioned, hey, we're going to be the hunted. Took some. I saw an interview from Kirby Smart at Georgia, and they talked about, you know, taking the fight to people and being the hunter. There's no reason our team can't do that. I mean, that's all mindset. And so you'll see us try to kind of emulate that mentality where we're attacking how we practice every day, the play, the game, the schedule, with a lot of aggressiveness. And you know, yesterday's practice, we had like a 4.5 inning inter squad where we were simulating a 3-3 game in the middle of the game, and it was a very high level game, you know, with 2 LSU teams basically. So I like the way our players are going about it, and if there's no room to tiptoe around this league, and we're excited about that challenge.
See, you mentioned Kirby Smart, and I'm so old. I remember living in Atlanta, and the show was a national show, and I'm so old that he was in high school when he was on our show, and he was one of the guys that was a college recruit. But I know what you mean. Do you take that one of those interviews you're talking about with Kirby? He said something that struck me. He said, when he gives his famous pregame speeches and he changes a few things just so it doesn't get stale, and he says, sometimes I'll take something from Nick, or sometimes I'll take something from something I hear on TV or on SportsCenter, and I'll spin it my own way. when you talk, I know baseball's a little different than football. Football's more rah-rah getting going, but do you ever take any words of wisdom maybe from anybody else, or is this everything just come off top?
Oh yeah, no, I study elite coaches all the time
right.
in all sports. I mean, when you talk about recruiting, you know, John Calipari at Kentucky is probably the elite head coach recruiter in all of college basketball, excuse me. When you look at college football, big fan of, you know, paying attention to how Alabama football built Alabama football. But right across the street from me is one of the best college football coaches in the country right now, in Brian Kelly. And I was really impressed this year with how, no matter the situation, you know, losing the opening game, heartbreaking loss.
Right in the building behind
right here.
Right here.
And then how they just stuck to their plan and just really worked on developing the team and improving the team throughout the season, and didn't get so consumed with the results or outside noise. Like, that was a really good example for our team to hopefully emulate as we go forward here. But yeah, I study coaches all the time, whether it was Augie Garrido, Skip Bertman, Paul Maneri, you know, great college baseball coaches. I take a lot from any successful coach, and then try to blend it into what we're doing. You know, one of the things that Coach Smart said at Georgia leading up to the national championship game was it wasn't just about winning, it was playing to the standard above winning.
Yes.
And then it almost kind of liberates the players, where you take the pressure off of it and just like, hey, there's a level that we're going to compete to, that we're going to be fundamentally sound with, that we're going to make good decisions around. And I mean, it certainly showed with their team that was really, really talented. And if you do all of those things with the right people and talent, then you can accomplish the things that you and everybody around you wants to.
65-7, I think it showed a little bit. I'm going to get back to that burn analogy. One question about it, because when you come up with something like that, was that off the cuff, or had you maybe seen a fire on TV and you thought about, hey, I might use this one day? How'd you come up with that one?
You know, I just got asked so much, like, over the past month since the rankings started to come out about, man, it's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations. and for me, it's more about, I want the expectations from me and our staff to the players to be really clear.
Yeah.
And it's maximum effort towards preparing.
Right.
We have to be the most prepared team when the game starts. And then maximum effort towards executing your job that's going to help the team win. Now, there's so many uncontrollable things once the game starts that I don't want them so consumed with winning that they forget the preparation part, that they forget doing their job. And that's been a good model, the staying in the moment, focusing on the task at hand. I really believe in that. Baseball is a long game, and we have a lot of firepower in terms of pitchers and position players, where 27 outs against our offense is going to be a lot to get. We may give up 2 or 3 runs, but we have pitchers that can keep them, you know, right there and throw zeros. So we have to be experts at just staying focused on what our job is throughout a game. And if we do that, then the talent shows up in a way to help you win.
You know, I remember you saying that last year. I talked to you every week at WWL last year when you came on each week. And I remember you saying that same thing about, hey, we might be giving up some because you didn't inherit a great pitching staff. Some guys left, and you know, you didn't have time to recruit really. But we're going to score, and that a lot of the mentality I remember growing up with was that small ball. Hey, let's just make sure we can get the pitchers to hold them 3 runs or less, and then and then obviously gorilla ball came later. But I'm talking about the major leagues with the early Cardinals teams in the '80s and stuff like that. They would just try to get base to base, station to station. But you're like, hey, let's just get a bunch of runs in a hurry if we can.
You know, for me, I love offensive baseball. Yeah. Like, that's kind of my wheelhouse.
Yes,
I'm a football guy at heart, and you know, how do you find ways to win? And really, what we try to build our offense around is to be able to win any type of game. You know, low scoring, 1-run game, slugfest, day game, night game, big park, small park, wind blowing in, wind blowing out. And so we want to be able to have a skill set that allows us to do all of that. Last year's team was built around walks and extra base hits.
Yes.
Very common day baseball-ish, so to speak. But we had plenty of skill to bunt, to move runners, and all of those things. We were really good at getting guys in from third with less than 2 outs. And I think you'll see that with this team. And I think having some depth, you know, there may be guys in and out of there that bring a little something different to the table, that you can kind of slot them where their skills match up really well with what the game requires for us to win. And so I'm excited to have a lot going on with our offense this year.
You know, I noticed, because I look at stats a little differently than most, but you just said something I was going to bring up. Your extra base hits, it was interesting when I looked at, what I do is I'll look at the at-bats, and then I'll add up the extra base hits, the triples, double, and obviously home runs. And then I'll say, okay, what's the percentage of those? There's so many of those, way over 50%, or at least on your team last year. I was like, wow, Cruz gets a lot of singles, but he gets a lot of everything, right? But, you know, you just mentioned the extra base hits. I mean, like, obviously we want to get doubles, triples, and home runs more than anything, but like last year, is that abnormal for that to be like that ratio? 'Cause sometimes some of these guys are 60-65% on that.
Well, I think there was a couple things offensively. It was a very good team last year. I mean, Dylan Cruz, best player in college baseball right now. Jacob Berry was the first college player drafted, in last year's draft. So you didn't want to take the bat out of those guys' hands. And so try to set up where they can come up with as many guys on base and let their talent show.
We just saw a Dylan Cruz thing. I pulled off the bio of him, and it's hard to see. I guess if you have TV, you're going to have to get close. But this is like his accolades. This is just 2022 right here. When you look at this guy, he was All-American, co-player of the year in the SEC, Golden Spikes. I mean, everything. He's a great defensive player. Let's start talking about him then, because one of the other quotes I loved hearing you say on the interview, one of the interviews I saw just a couple days ago, who got the first pick? Is it the Pirates? Hey, Pittsburgh, you might want to take a look because that's the first overall pick in the draft next year. Is he that good?
He's pretty special. Yeah. And I've been blessed with a lot of players that have made it to the major leagues, a ton of recent players that have been drafted high, and just from a full skill set, mentally, physically, baseball tools, he's about as good as they come.
He looks like just from a guy outside looking in, obviously didn't play college baseball, but I played a lot of baseball, no baseball. He just reminds me the way he's physical, and I watch him in the field, the way he can run. Maybe not as good a runner, but everything else, like Mike Trout.
Yeah, he can run too. He's made himself into an elite defensive center fielder.
Yes, he has.
The stolen base thing, he's always on me, wants to steal more bases, but
the year before you got there, he stole a lot, right? And then last year,
it's kind of twofold. You're going to have a great hitter hitting behind him, and then obviously you want to make sure he stays healthy for the duration of this thing. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Well, one of those great hitters I can't wait to meet. I'd love to have this guy on the show is Tommy Tanks White. I think you got him slotted maybe at third base, but the fact is this guy is a transfer from NC State. I produced a lot of ACC baseball when I was at Fox Sports at South over there. So I know the ACC well, and I know they hate to lose a player like this. And I showed you this cartoon last time. This was on SEC Baseball's Twitter site last year. We got when you picked up Tommy. It says Cruise Missiles and Tommy Tanks firing in 2023. The outfield bleachers at the box are going to be unsafe. Are these guys going to go back-to-back? Because he led the country for freshmen in home runs. He would have led the country if he played the whole season for any class. But this guy has a freshman record for home runs, and now he's going to be at LSU for at least 2 years.
Yeah, big-time pickup. I think there's a couple things that stand out. Number one, he has worked really hard and made himself into a good defender. I mean, he is playing outstanding at third base right now, which is a big lift for our team. And then just the quality of the hitter. I mean, the power really jumps off the page to you with 27 home runs and the what I call light tower power home runs. But I mean, his ability to hit the ball to all fields, his plate discipline has improved, ability to handle high-level pitching. Very excited, obviously, to have Tommy here.
Light tower power. I'm writing that down. I've not heard that. I can't believe I didn't know that one. I hate to get to pitching because I'm going to get back, but I watched him in an interview saying, speaking of a guy that is developing himself, but he talked about another transfer, the guy from Air Force, obviously, the great pitcher, Paul. Is it Skeens?
Paul Skeens.
Skeens, that's how you pronounce it. But this is a hitter and a pitcher, but the way he was talking about him almost irreverently, I don't know if you heard this, he goes, he's the best pitcher I've ever seen. And I wasn't going to segue this quickly into pitching, but I had to say it because you were talking about Tommy and how he's improved. Is this guy the truck it seems to be? I mean,
yeah, special cat, and I mean it's not just a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, wipeout slider plus change. The character and the makeup thing.
Air Force
doesn't show up in college baseball every day.
Yeah,
and he's going to have a large impact. He'll pitch opening night for us and pitch on Fridays, but his ability as a leader, and just as a human being to raise the level of everybody else in our program has been outstanding. It's something you kind of dream about as a coach. You know, you have to have very good peer leadership amongst your team. And this guy, I mean, he's been here for 6 or 7 months. I mean, I think our team would tell you this is the leader of our team.
That's amazing, because they were all kind of talking like that. And I guess some of the Air Force military background has something to do. He's 6'6", he's towering as well. But look at them in that picture. He's obviously tall. So he's the opening guy. Is he going to bat when he pitches? Because I don't know how that works in college baseball. I know you have a DH, but can he do both in the same game?
Yeah, I'm not closed off to anything, but as of right now, probably not.
But bat otherwise when he's not in?
It depends on kind of the recovery and all of that. He's going to hit for us. He hit yesterday in the inter-squad games. How we structure that, we have to pay attention to, because it's obviously we're going to use him to win, but this guy's got a chance to be, you know, a top 5 overall pick in the draft. And when we brought him here, it's also my job to help protect him, you know, in that regard. I think the first thing we did was, he's actually a really good catcher too, but we completely eliminated that from the equation.
Right.
We're going to eliminate hitting while he pitches from the equation, at least for the time being. The next day will be about recovery.
Right.
And then
maybe Sunday type,
Tuesday type thing. I think you'll see the bulk of his at-bats. Saturday would be, you know, how does he feel, you know, for like a pinch hit role, you know, those types of things. But hey, I've never had a pitcher of this caliber in 20 years as a college coach, and that's saying a lot. I mean, it's 2 Omaha teams, a bunch of championship teams, and NCAA tournament teams.
That's something else.
And so that's where his main contribution is going to be. But he can hit the ball over the fence pretty easily too. So we'll just do right by Paul and then fit it into our team structure the way it should.
I want to come back to pitchers in a second, but I got a text this weekend. I'm on an LSU thread with the guys that love all LSU sports, about 20 of us, and we were just talking about some things, and then oh no, we were talking about Joe Burrow. Where it was a Joe Burrow game, and all of a sudden the conversation segued for somewhere in the second half to LSU baseball. We were talking about, hey, we can't wait to get to games, and all of us were talking about our tailgating and going up there, and it was so exciting. And they go, Scotty, you know, do you know much about it? I said, well, I know the coach might be coming on Tuesday. Haven't got the verification on if it's definitely this week or not. But the fact is they mentioned Gorilla Ball because they all remember in the late 90s in particular, LSU just had slugger after slugger after slugger coming up to bat. Guys that played, if not in the majors, they were certainly playing in professional baseball for a long time. But you've got guys, and we mentioned Tommy Tanks. By the way, I didn't say this earlier. Baseball All-America's preseason All-American team had 4 guys from LSU. 4. And I don't know what every poll has, but this one, we mentioned Dylan Cruz was a first-teamer, Paul Skeens was a first-teamer, Trey Morgan a second-teamer, and then obviously, who I just mentioned, Tommy White was a second-teamer. That's remarkable. 3 of those guys, I imagine, will be somewhere near the middle of your lineup. Morgan, White, and of course Cruz, but Dugas hit 18 home runs. I mean, who else we got up in here that could be Joe Bear? I mean, he could hit. Like, how many guys in there do you think, or how many of these guys are potential home run hitters that you're going to have in your lineup?
Yeah, I think all of them have the power, potential to get to their power in the game. Yeah. And we try to develop a hitting system that's very simple, very repeatable, and gives them adjustability to hit the best caliber of pitching. And then we have talented guys, as you said. I think Trey Morgan is one I would like to highlight just because he's a great competitor.
I love him. I love him.
You can't, if you watch LSU baseball, there's no way that when you come watch, you can't question whether that guy's given everything he can to help the team win. The competitiveness of his at-bats, the quality of the defense, all of it is outstanding. And so really excited about Trey. And I think he's developed. I think he's a better player today than he was during last year. And that's exciting. And yeah, so mixing those few guys in the middle of the order together and then having some depth. You know, you mentioned Braden Joubert. He's had a really good start to spring practice. Gavin Dugas is working his way back from an injury. Hasn't really played yet. Yeah. But then there's a really good group of freshmen as well. Paxton Kling, Jared Jones, Brady Neal. That are going to be staples. Gavin Guidry. Right on. They're going to be staples of what we're doing for a few years here, and that's really exciting.
Pitching though, I gotta touch this because last year, you know, like I said, you just came in July, you didn't get a chance to or June, whatever it was, you didn't get a chance to really recruit a full year of getting pitchers, and now it's you know, you never know with pitchers because arms can go, but looks like an embarrassment of riches at times when I look. Now, that's just on paper, but we have seen some of these guys play play college baseball. We mentioned Skeens, but talk about some of these other guys that you brought in, because it's got to feel good knowing that you have a chance to win just because of your pitcher every game.
No question. I think, you know, assessing where we needed to get to relative to competing to get back to Omaha to win a national championship, the starting pitching was where we needed the biggest upgrade. And so adding Paul was a big deal. Thatcher Hurd, transfer from UCLA, really competitive, really
Love this guy.
Great arm, can really spin the ball at a high level, ability to strike people out. Really positive step forward from Grant Taylor and Ty Floyd. Two guys that were on our staff last year. Christian Little, transfer from Vanderbilt.
I remember him well.
Big time stuff. Freshman named Chase Shores has all the makings of a future ace at LSU. So really excited about that grouping.
So we mentioned Hurd. I got to say this because you're at Arizona. He's a California guy. He was the #1 pitcher coming out. I knew about him from here. I mean, I don't follow it super close, but I do see who the top prospects are. And was this a guy you had on your radar when you were out there on the West Coast?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We recruited him when he was very young. You know, wouldn't say we almost had him at Arizona, but it's kind of a funny story why we didn't get him. It's too long to tell.
Is it too long? All right.
But I had a good connection with him. He comes from a great family, great people. I mean, this guy's also kind of inserted himself as an important person on our team, not just because of his ability, unique ability to prepare at a high level, and that's rubbed off on other guys and helped taking our pitching preparation to another level. And excited, like Tommy White, to have him for a couple years. Talk
about real quick, I know we're wrapping up here, but I want to get about the season coming up. I know we start, I believe, 17 days from right now. If you're watching this on a Tuesday broadcast, it's going to be Friday, I believe the 17th. Is that the day?
That's
and
it.
Then talk about that opener. And then I always love the next weekend. Is it the second weekend you go to Texas and they have the thing at Round Rock, which is a great stadium, by the way, because I've done some minor league games over there. But the fact is they always have a great collection of talent coming in, and they all round robin play each other. Talk about those first 2 weekends, get the season, get everybody jacked up for the year.
Yeah, I think we're always going to play opening weekend at home.
Yeah,
I think that wouldn't go over too well with LSU baseball fans.
No, it wouldn't. It really wouldn't.
So excited to get to opening night. I'll tell you what. Last year, opening night obviously was my first game at LSU. How I felt at the beginning of that game, I'll never forget that the rest of my life.
Really?
Just in terms of the energy in the ballpark, the enthusiasm for our team. I mean, it's special, and I don't take that for granted. I think it's the best home field advantage in all of college baseball, and we'll need them to continue to come out and support the way that they do. And then I always like getting into a neutral site, multi-team tournament early in the season against good competition, because that simulates the NCAA tournament sometimes, and Omaha, and playing 2 Power 5 teams and a really good mid-major team with Kansas State, Iowa, and Sam Houston State in Round Rock.
They're good.
Sam Houston's one of the best mid-major programs in the country. Iowa has one of the best pitching staffs in all of college baseball, and Kansas State has a real veteran lineup. So if you look at the dynamic of all of that, very much like an NCAA regional, and then a road game at Texas on Tuesday, which is great. We'll get in a hostile environment, prior to getting into that in SEC play, which I think will really benefit our team.
You're staying in Texas, I'm assuming, right? Because I saw the Tuesday game after the Sunday, and I'm like, they're coming back to Baton Rouge. That's scheduled on purpose, so you get a good team out there.
Yes.
I'd be remiss to say this, because you had just gotten this guy when I first saw you last July, which is when I met you, Wes Johnson, the pitching coach. I've watched a bunch of interviews from him, and this guy, listen, I produced Major League Baseball for 14 years. I know what it's like to be a pitching coach. I mean, that's a big deal. The Twins had a good staff. This is a stud. I want you people to know, if you didn't see the show in July, what this guy's all about. But I saw an interview with him as well. I dug deep for this interview. But I was watching him. He said, this is the best pitching staff that might be on any level right now. And he's talking about it. But what is a guy like him, what can he do for a pitching staff?
Well, I think the most important part of player development is player buy-in. And when you got a guy that's come from the highest level, not just the major leagues, but he's leaving from first place in the major leagues.
That's the craziest thing in the middle of the season.
I mean, he's so complete as a coach, but he's so complete, has this unbelievable aptitude, but then you have the player buy-in with it. I mean, the results have just gone like that.
I got to ask you, how did it happen, though? I mean, how did it happen? Because, listen, I could imagine, I was trying to picture if I was, traveling with the team, the Braves, and the pitching coach just went to a college, you'd be like, what the hell? What's going on around here?
Yeah, I almost had him last year when I first came here. We were in extensive talks, and, actually when I interviewed for the job, Scott Woodward said, kind of, what's your dream staff? And I laid it out with Wes, and we tried, and there was reasons he couldn't do it at the time. And then so when Coach Kelly, who did a really nice job with our staff last year, got the head job at the University of Washington, and that opportunity came up, it was a no-brainer. And, he gets a lot of publicity for his knowledge of analytics and those types of things, but how he translated it into teaching and developing the pitcher is amazing. The game prep is at the highest possible level, and just the daily interactions with coaches and players with our staff right now is really, really good. There's a lot of synergy in the building, and Wes adds a lot to that.
Well, I got to ask you quick as we wrap up here. There's one of your coaches, Josh Jordan, as well. As we wrap up here, we all hear about the NIL, how it affects football, right? Now, I'm friends with a guy, close friends from college, Gordon McKernan, is doing a lot of the football stuff. How does it affect baseball? Because I know these guys, especially now, because now maybe you can compete a little more with them, the guys that can get big contracts in the major leagues right out of high school. Will it affect you in a way that you can maybe entice them to stay a little easier? I don't know how it works. Yeah,
I don't think the NIL money in baseball will get to the point where it can compete with Major League Baseball draft money.
Sure.
I don't foresee that. With that being said, I mean, we have a great platform here because we played 36 home games with 12,000 people rolling through the stadium, get upwards of 500,000 people running through Alex Box Stadium. LSU baseball is a thing. Our players are very marketable, and so there's an opportunity for them to get deals with businesses and those types of things because they're marketable. And that's a great thing for us and a great thing for the players to be able to take advantage of.
Coach, we give gifts here. I know your wife's running around town right now, but the next time you come, you can combine the one you got last time with this one, and then you can have a real good meal with some good wine too. That's from Shays, Della Shays. That's uptown, right there near Tulane's campus, between Carrollton and Broadway. It's a great place. You'll love that. And this is Taz Performance. You got one of these last time?
Love it.
You loved it?
Yeah.
You hadn't heard of him before, though.
Had not.
Now you know about him. That's a Tulane. My next guest is Willie Fritz. He's the Tulane head coach. I can't wait for you two to meet, by the way. But that guy that owns that company is a former Tulane athlete. Also, Coach, we have a tradition here. We sign the ball, and since COVID, we've been doing colored signs instead of just black. But here you go. This is going to be purple, and I want you to find a spot somewhere in here. We'll find a good one. If you can't find one there, I'm going to throw you another ball off camera. But there's Jay Johnson. We cannot wait for the start of this LSU baseball season. He's got #1 going in. Oh, Jay, I'm not going to be able to read that. Who's that? Is that how your regular signature?
That's
All right.
it.
All right, I got to get something that just said print Jay Johnson out. But thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
Yes, sir.
Listen, he took the time on short notice to come down here with the season right around the corner. Baton Rouge is not like coming down just 8 blocks. He took the time to come down here, and I very much appreciate him so much. I can't wait for LSU baseball, just like I couldn't wait for Tulane football this past season. And every week they kept winning and winning and winning, and then they got all the way to the Cotton Bowl and beat the USC Trojans. We've had every star player, well, not everyone, but we've had the quarterback, the running back, wide receiver, linebacker, center. We've had a bunch, but now we're going to have Willie Fritz back because when he was here in June with his quarterback, that quarterback said they're going to compete for a championship. Coming off a 2-10 season, that's saying something, and they backed it up. So I can't wait to hear from the coach himself right here on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
The owners of the Della Shays Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Della Shay, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Della Shay, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll at Mid-City Lane.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. What a great interview that was with Jay Johnson. I can't wait for the LSU baseball season. But you know what? Football's still going on. The Super Bowl's around the corner. Basketball's in full speed. And I got to tell you, at Tulane, right down the street on Willow and obviously on Ferret, depending on what stadium, on Claiborne, things are happening over there. I mean, listen to this. The football team just went 12-2. The basketball team is right in the mix, right there towards the top of the American Athletic Conference, and then baseball right here with Jay Oman, the new head coach, right around the corner. I cannot wait for that. But we're going to talk football because back in June, you might remember this, I had Willie, Fritz. I had the quarterback, Michael Pratt. They came on the show, and they came together, and we had a lot of fun. They were coming off a 2-10 season. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Michael looked at me. He says, I think we're going to compete for a championship this year. And now that I know the full story, because I've had Nick Anderson on the show, the great linebacker, a captain. I've had Sincere Haynesworth on the show, another captain. And I've had other players, Tajay Spears, the Conference Player of the Year, and others. But they all said the same thing when I asked about the success of this team. They said, hey, the captains got together and got players-only meetings, and they said, we're going to win next year. We're going to all dedicate ourselves to it. And my goodness, I didn't know the backstory, but this story is one of the best I've heard in all of college football, and I've been watching for a half of a century. And this year, Tulane went from 2-10 to 12-2, the greatest turnaround in college history. And here is the architect of it, Willie, my man Fritz. Good to see you, buddy.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
It's good to have you back,
Have
man.
me on. Appreciate it.
I feel like you've been on at least 7-8 times. I mean, think about it.
I've been on quite a few times.
Well, when you got the job, right? I mean, right. You came on, and we've been in a different
Probably
studio
every
now.
year, at least once, yeah.
Yeah, so let me go here from the very beginning, because you were excited to get this job. You had great success at Georgia Southern, great success at Sam Houston, and now you came to Tulane. And like most places, when you have a new coach, it's a little bit of a rebuilding thing. And you had some immediate success, and you plateaued a little bit, but still better runs in Tulane. Had 3 bowls in a row and things like that. And then you had the down year. We know the reasons. We know the COVID stuff. That's a young Willie right there. Remember that guy? Yeah. There he is.
Vaguely.
Vaguely. You can tell by the shirt. It's a different logo. That's a different logo when you got the job.
My wife told me that I need to change my first name to 62-year-old.
62-year-old?
Fritz, because everybody always puts that out in front of my name.
Is that what
nowadays?
They do?
Yeah.
No, now they say American Athletic Conference champion Willie Fritz. But now you've seen this progression through a little more than half a dozen years. What's it been like, and what have you seen from the beginning to now with the difference of Tulane football?
Well, you know, when we came in and I talked to you, the goal for us was to have sustained success at Tulane. They've had great teams in the past, great players, just haven't done it year after year after year. And that's going to be the trick this next season. You know, we're already gearing up to have a fantastic season in 2023.
Typical coach, already ready for next season.
You know, my wife's told me many times, well, would you please enjoy this? And,
yes.
You know, and I'm just not built that way. But, you know, you alluded to the bowl games. You know, we played 3 years in a row. We played in bowl games, and we came so close to winning, you know, 8, 9, 10, even 11 games. One season we lost 4 games on the last play. You know, that's hard to do. I don't know how I did it, but we did it.
Well, that's how those gray hairs came in.
Exactly, right. But, you know, we feel like we got a lot of quality players coming back, and, you know, and then I think our guys, you know, are excited about the success we have, and we want to replicate this year after year. Well,
I'm going to say, man, I knew the circumstance of last year. I remember telling y'all I watched the Oklahoma game when they were #2. That was supposed to be a home game. I'm talking about the Ida year, right?
Right.
And I remember watching it with Spencer Tillman, a former legend at Oklahoma, because we did games. I think I was out in California. And I remember telling him, I said, you know, Tulane may not win this game, but they're definitely covering 30. And he's like, he's not a homer just because he played. He goes, Well, if you say so, you might know what you're talking about. And then we were watching in the fourth quarter because we didn't see the whole. And y'all were winning the game. And Norman, I'm just sitting here, look at this, and I'm watching Michael Pratt run around like he's Michael Vick, and I'm like sitting here, look at this guy. But when you talk about that season, losing that one, and it kind of snowballed. You were in Birmingham for so long, and then obviously you took Cincinnati to the mat, and they were a Final Four team as well. I likened it a little bit with the way the Saints, the year before they won the Super Bowl. People don't remember this, but they were 8-8, right? They weren't 2-10. They were 8-8. They weren't in the playoffs or anything, but they had lost 5 games by 4 points or less, and they were right there. And so that you knew you had the talent. And I don't know if anybody could have seen this turnaround, but well, you just mentioned you lost some close games in those bowl years. You lost some close games last year. Did you have a feeling maybe that was kind of forging these guys for the next year?
I think so. We felt like we had, the talent to compete for a conference championship going into this past season. But, there's a lot of things that were kind of against us that year with, we had new coaching staff. We had to work through some of that. I didn't do as good a job as a head coach as I needed to.
Well, your 3-day trip to Birmingham turned out to be 40, 30.
A little bit longer.
Right.
But, we all needed to improve after the season. We knew that. I'd do a better job as a head coach. We had to do a better job. Coaches, players had to play better. Trainers had to train better, all those different things. And, we kind of, put that in the rearview mirror and just really worked on getting better every single day. We had a slogan all season of 1-0, that we were going to, win that week, win that practice, win that game. And the kids embraced that, and we got on a great roll, and we're able to have some unprecedented success for Tulane.
Well, the Kansas State game sticks out because that you're 2-0 at that point. You go to a place that's tough. I did a couple of their games this season. I know they can be tough. I mean, they took TCU. They ended up beating TCU, but they ended up beating the eventual Big 12 champion. You went into their place, a Power 5 place that is tough to play in, and you won that game. I mean, did that give the players some belief that everything we've been talking about is true?
Yeah, that was probably the first component to us having a great season. We had 2 games early versus UMass and Alcorn State that we felt, that we were going to be able to win those games, and it gave us the ability to figure out, all right, we're going to play this guy, these situations, this guy can do this, and gave us the experience
we
needed to have. And some people don't, it hasn't been mentioned very much, but we had the toughest schedule in NCAA football the year before.
Wow.
Based on, I think,
No, for real.
10 of the teams played in bowl games, and some really good teams that we played that season. So this was good to kind of eke into the year, and then our guys got in there and just competed really well against Kansas State on the road, as you said, and it was great to watch the competitive fire that all the guys had in that game, and I knew then we had an opportunity to be successful.
Well, you're on the national stage in the Houston game. Everybody watches that Friday night game, and you're on the road there. I know it's tough to come back off of an emotional win. It's human nature, whether it be a pro athlete or a college athlete, and you had to let down against Southern Miss. It's almost predictable. I mean, if you bet, that's what you do. You look for the biggest upset and then go against the next week. It happens. But your team got off the mat. That's the difference. Your team went and won 5 in a row right after that. But Willie, that Friday night game, I remember we have big dinners when we go with our crew. We're out in LA or wherever we are, different games. And it's a big thing. That's where we kind of meet. I stayed home that night. I said, I'm watching Tulane. And I could have been more proud. Your third-string quarterback came in, and Houston had just done their game 2 weeks before. They played at Texas Tech. We did the opener there, and they were ranked, so I knew they were good. They were very good. Clayton Tune's a great quarterback. Man, when your third-string team beat them, and they got that receiver Dell, I mean, they got players over there.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one that hit me because I got to watch you the whole game as opposed to get my scores during my own game. And I said, this team is really for real. And did that give you another level of confidence?
Yeah, I really think it was, the K-State game you talked about, then the Houston game.
Yeah.
Was probably the next most important game in our season because we, faced some adversity. We had some injuries. Needed to, have a third-team quarterback lead us to victory, Kai Horton, which he did. But we found a way to win. There's some plays that had to be made defensively, special teams, offense, and the guys did it. You never know what the path to victory is going to be, and that was probably the the reason why we were so successful this year, we were good on all three phases. We had very good offense, very good defense, and also played excellent in the kicking game.
I have to say this because, Willie, I have had you on after one or two of these tough SMU losses. And then I realized after that Houston game, I said, this team can beat everybody on the schedule potentially, right? You can always have a letdown against anybody, but I knew you had a chance, right? So then I saw SMU on that Thursday night schedule, and Thursday nights are another special night for people watching. And we had a Friday night game, so I was already on the road. I'm like, oh, I can't even go to that one. But the fact is I just watched the score get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, that had to give a little satisfaction. And it wasn't like you were rubbing it in. You had backups doing it, and they were all scoring, and they kept scoring. But after so many heartbreakers against that team, that had to feel good.
No, it really did. We've had a tough go against SMU. There's been, I think, 3 or 4 games we've lost on the last play of the game. So they're very, very tough against them. But the kids played great that Thursday evening and got a chance to. I think it's one of the few games. I think I almost played every guy that suited up in the game, which is difficult to do. But the kids just played great game plan by the coaches, and it was a huge win for us.
So, Willie, going through now, you get to you beat Cincinnati. Okay, that's no small feat. I mean, listen, you lost to UCF, and then UCF loses, I believe, to Navy, or somebody loses to Navy. No, somebody loses to Navy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they have a chance again. So let's go take you back to your mindset. You're going into this now. You beat Cincinnati, which is big. They had a long winning streak at home. We obviously know they were in the Final Four last year. Very good team. That's a huge win. And now you realize you're in the championship game, and you're home. You get UCF again. And then I'm going to take you to the end of it, but take you back to when that game ended, you win, and then everybody's on the field, because it reminded me of '73 when I was a kid, when Tulane beat LSU 14-0. I was 8 years old, and I remembered vividly 84,000 people being in that 80,000 seat stadium. And I was between the stands and the chain link fence they used to have, that big old Tulane stadium. But when I saw the pictures of everybody on the field, man, I was just like so in heaven, because I was, like I said, that was doing my own game right there. I was doing my own game in Boise of all places, but I was watching that picture of Tyjae Spears right there will always be ingrained in my mind, because I saw that in the paper on Sunday and it's full color, and I'm like, and I pulled it out and I held it up on the show. But talk about that feeling you remember back then when you had that.
Well, it was awesome. You talk about the Cincinnati game, and we had to win that game. We had a big drive at the end and a stop defensively. I think they'd won 32 games in a row. So that set us up, and after that game, it gave us a ton of confidence. And, something that I think is neat about that game, all them students, I've seen it a few different times, jumping onto the field, and nobody got hurt. I kept so there's got to be an ACL in here someplace.
Somewhere has got
all these girls and guys jumping onto the field, but it was really neat. It was, it was great for the university and obviously the football program. But the city of New Orleans really embraced us this year, and that's something that we've had a little bit of. We played in the Armed Forces Bowl a few years back. I think we had 10,000 Tulanians over at the ball game, but that particular game against UCF at home, packed house, winning the game and in the fashion we won it, and then everybody storming the field. It's going to be something I'll always remember.
No doubt. I mean, being home, it's akin to, I know the USC game wasn't a Super Bowl, but it was kind of a Super Bowl. But I remember flying in from where I was living in Atlanta to the NFC Championship game, right? The year the Saints won the Super Bowl, the big win against the Vikings. This was the game I remember more than the Super Bowl, because it's in our place. It's in our dome. It's on our soil, and I just was like crying tears of joy. I was in an Elvis outfit, just not in the press box. I wanted to be a fan. I grew up here. I wanted to be a fan. That's what it was like for these Tulane guys. I've talked to people that are my age in their 50s and people that I look up to in their 60s and 70s, and they were all like, Scott, it was the most incredible feeling. And I'm going to bring you back to Tyjae Spears, because I had him on a week or two after that. And Tyjae has this heart of a kid. He really does. And he's just he's got a good spirit about him, right? And I was saying, what was that like for you? Because I showed him that picture of him on the stands, right? I mean, on the shoulder. And he goes, Scott, it's like this. I I had the students around. I figured we'd, but I had these 80-year-old men stop and let's take a picture. He goes, it was just something I never knew I experienced, but it was the best feeling ever. That's what I'm talking about right there.
Yeah.
You know, when your players are just feeling the same thing, the fans are, and everybody, it's just one big love fest.
Well, it really was, and Tajay is just such an outstanding young man. I've talked to, he's over practicing with the Senior Bowl right now, and I've had a bunch of scouts call me up, and they've interviewed him, and one of them told me, is this guy for real?
Right.
Is he really this nice of a young man? I said, yes, he is. He's a great kid, but it was neat to, you know, I went out to that game about, you know, we go out to warm up about an hour and 5 minutes before the game, and there was probably already 3,000 or 4,000 students in their seat.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd never seen that before.
Wow.
At a Tulane game, so that was really a neat moment as well.
That had to give you something.
Yeah,
inside,
it did. You know,
that's what you've been striving for.
Well, we wanted to bring that here.
Yeah.
To Tulane and New Orleans, and we were able to do it. And you know, Tajay, I don't know if you remember, he made a long run down their sideline and kind of got banged up, and he started coming off the field, and he started taking his time walking off the field. And the kids were all yelling, you know, Tajay, and he kind of was leading them, and I had to grab him and say, let's get your butt off the field. We got a game to play.
We got a game right
here. But that was a neat moment as well.
I got to bring up, before we run out of time, USC, because that was the moment. That's a seminal moment. As big as that game at home was, let's be real, the national stage saw your game. The national people, I'm talking about people from all over the country. I'm a guest on many podcasts, and then your name is like, your name's out there. I mean, this team is out there. People are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know Tulane was that good. I have a USC former player on my hallway, and he was like, he was so upset. I'm like, dude, I told you Tulane was going to win. I thought you were being a homer, Scott. I said, no, they're good. Your defense stinks. We're going to run all over y'all. We're going to pass, and we did. You backed it up. But in a nutshell, give me a minute of what this game meant to you.
Well, I'll tell you the greatest thing I thought about the game. We had close to 35,000 people, Tulanians, New Orleans.
It was going to be 135,000 by next year.
It was incredible. It was, you know, we had twice as many people as they had, and they were loud and proud the whole ball game. And you know, I get so many people send me the very end of that ball game when, you know, when they overturned the call, and you know, they showed that whole sideline of all the fans on our side of the stadium. So it was a great moment as well, and just proud of the guys and how they performed that afternoon.
I mean, I'm embarrassed because for the first time since I've been doing this show, I was so excited when you got here because you and Jay were talking and getting to meet, and we were taking some pictures, that I don't have my task shirt for you. I have it. You're going to get it, but I don't get to hand it on air, so let's pretend. Hey, task performance.
All right.
You've had a few of them now. It's from the first time you went on to now. I mean, I figure you're wearing these a little bit now.
Well, you know, Al Andrews is a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
so
well,
Tulane graduate.
Tomorrow night.
Tulane graduate and
last all SEC
He's
player.
in the Hall of Fame and for basketball, and so I'm always proud to wear Al's gear.
Well, I know Al's going to be watching. Al, here real quick. I have the shirt, but you know, Willie, Al and I were supposed to go to the
I've
game.
got a lot of task stuff. He's taking care of me over the
years.
I'm
sure he does. But this is Shays Della Shays. Now, you probably have at least 6 of these, so now you can add them up and get yourself a $300 dinner right there on Maple on campus by the Starbucks. Shays Della Shays. You can go to Della Shays as well, Willie. Congrats. Thank you for staying. I was in Atlanta for 20 years, and I know that Georgia Tech was on the radar. You made every Tulane person ecstatic, and I know that means something to you because you said you want to coach here for the rest of your coaching career.
No, it really, we love it here,
yeah.
and I'm just very fortunate to be the head coach here at Tulane.
I got a great story for you after, because I went to the game that Monday night, the Tulane basketball game, and all these alum were sitting by me, and they were so upset. And they were just so, I said, it ain't over yet, guys. He's going to stay. He's going to stay. And he stayed. And what about, he stayed, not only won the American Athletic Conference, but that big win over USC is one that people like me, kids that are 8 years old today, will be remembering when they're my age 50 years later. So it's a remarkable time to be a Tulane fan, booster, student, and it's so much fun. All sports. Get out there and support the Green Wave just like you support everybody. Saints, Pelicans, LSU, all of them. They all deserve it. UNO, they all deserve it. So, hey, we want to thank Willie and, of course, my man Jay Johnson. That season starts, like I said, on February 17th. LSU is ranked #1 in the country, and Tulane is #1 in our hearts right here, down here in New Orleans. We love it, and we're going to get that thing going again next year. Hey, we're going to continue next week right here on Primetime Sports. See you then.